Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and today we're going to talk about one of the least discussed topics, loss. Loss is something you pretty much don't hear about in hobbies, economics, or life in general. It's just not a fashionable topic. It's definitely more hot to take a photo of Charizard and Naked Misty in a Ferrari on their way to the Fire Festival. But what I want to do here is use loss as a focal point to give you a better perspective or understanding on value. I think a lot of people who ask me the dreaded question, what should I buy? What card should I buy? What should I invest in? I have this much money. What should I buy to make the most money? I think the best way to address this is understanding that everybody's going to lose at some point. And you can't go into this, by this I mean collectibles, and you can't go into life thinking that's not going to happen. It's inevitable. And in fact, I would even argue that it's necessary. So when I started collecting, it was very simple. I just looked up something from the past, whether it's Pokemon, sports, Magic, you name it. It's all the same. Looked up something from the past that I'm interested in, did some research, and that made my first purchase. And then it snowballed from there to this avalanche of where we are today. That's all it is. And, when people ask me, what should I buy? My first response every single time is just buy what you enjoy. It's not a bumper sticker. It's not a catchphrase. It's not some chicken soup for the heart, soul type thing. It's just literally what I did. Doesn't matter. And I think a lot of people will conflate that and be like, well, it's easy for you to say because now you've done it all, whatever, you made this money. It was the same when I was in college. It was the same when I first started making a couple $100 a month. It was the exact same perspective. So that's what I wanted to give you is that beginning foundation, when people ask, what should I buy? There's an implication there. It's what should I buy to make the most money, right? What should I buy to make profit? And I don't always think that's good. I don't think that's a good thing. I think people need to understand that not caring about value does not equal not understanding value. I definitely understood value, but the real way and the true way I understood value is through my losses. When I made those losses, like the dreaded Clefable, pre-release Clefable, auctioned one of those off when it was about $50 to $75, somewhere in there, and it ended at a whopping $3.25. Oh yeah, we got to mention the 25 cents to make sure you understand how much I made on that sale. I mean, that card was never worth $3. You can try and romanticize the past as much as you want. That card was always worth more than $3. That's just one loss. Another one is Roaring Skies. I remember I had a couple cases of Roaring Skies during the $300 per box price point. I had a couple of them that I forgot in storage. Completely forgot about them. But I was like, you know what? Let me order like 20 cases of that when they do the reprint. And I'm still sitting on like 10 cases. Never sold a single one during the $300 price. So these are just examples that come to mind. And the point of that is that, even the best of the best, the most successful, whether it's hobbies, sports, life, investors, whoever it is, they're going to lose. There's going to be a time where they lose. Look at Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan lost games. He missed free throws. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. But, you have Connor McDavid. Look at Connor McDavid. Generational talent, one of the best players in the NHL, and he's on the Edmonton Oilers that didn't make the postseason. So the bottom line is everybody is going to lose and experience loss at some point, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I know we're always trying to get the best optimal outcome in collectibles, and I think sometimes because it's so insulated and unregulated, we kind of float away and drift away from reality. We lose our grounding at times, myself included. We pressure ourselves and pressure cook ourselves to always get the best result possible. But at the end of the day, you don't always want that. More specifically, I want to give you some universal truths that are not tied to just collectibles. I think they apply to everything in life. Number one, not every investment is Amazon. This is something I think more people need to understand. Not every investment is Amazon. Not every investment is even a stock. And even within a stock, you have so much variety. You have utilities, commodities, growth stocks. Within that, you have larger companies, smaller companies, different, just everything across the board. What they're selling, is there a dividend, what their focus is, who's the CEO. There's so much constantly in motion, which is why markets are interesting, because that risk is always there. It's always a part of the game. There's just so much variety within that one category. So I think that's one aspect, is that everybody perceives, when they ask that question, what should I buy? I want the blue chip, Amazon, bulletproof, investment advice. And right now, Amazon's unanswered. 10 years from now, will it be? I don't know. Probably not as much as now. Maybe it'll be more, maybe less. Who knows? But the point is, not every investment is Amazon. That's one universal truth. No investments are easy. No investments are riskless. No purchases are riskless. I don't care if it's Charizard, Naked Misty, any Magic card, Tabernacle. You pick your poison. Alpha, Beta, go down the line. I don't care what it is. Get into sports. Get into video games. Point at anything behind me. Point at anything you see, whatever it is in life. There's no riskless purchase. It's just not a thing. It's not a thing. Sure, you have things, I always tell people if you want a riskless purchase, go to the grocery store, buy some milk and some bread, you'll probably be okay. You'll probably get what you purchase, and there'll probably always be that price point. So there is no riskless investment. There is no riskless collectible. That's something that doesn't exist. And lastly, no investor always wins. Just like I said earlier, no person always wins, right? We understand that in sports. But I think when you abstract that to life, people forget that, a lot of these guys failed at some point. There was a downtick. There were peaks and valleys along their lifetime trajectory of growth. And I think a good example of someone, an actual investor, Bill Ackman, I believe is how you pronounce it. He was in that Netflix documentary on Valiant, that pharmaceutical company that's their side point. There was this girl in there who's an absolute juggernaut. Absolute juggernaut. She studied this company through and through meticulously in a way that no one else did. Sounds familiar. Putting in this extra effort, being extremely engaged, going further than anyone else did. I feel like that applies to a lot of other things in collectibles, sports, life, economics in general. But I digress. This girl just basically said, I think this company is going to decrease. I think its value is inflated, and I think it's going to drop. And sure enough, it did. But going back to this investor, this Bill Ackman, I think he lost, I can't remember the exact sum, but it was billions. We're talking billions with a B and plural. I think that's more money more loss than everybody watching this video combined has ever experienced. And if anything, that guy, he's still a billionaire. His gain is still astronomical. Like, he's made more wealth than, some countries will. And the bottom line here is it really encapsulates a lot of the topics that we're always, circling. But in relation to not all investors win, this guy lost billions. I mean, that completely trumps anything from your Skyridge Charizard. Pick the worst offender. Your WotC card that depreciated, instead of having 2,000% growth from 5 years, it only had like 1,000% growth. So pick your poison. Pick the worst offender in Pokemon that's dropped. Nowhere near that example. So point being, this idea of loss is universal life. More importantly, it really puts into perspective why you're here and what you're doing. So, coming back to me, going full circle here and talking about that idea that I started with that I still maintain today. I simply buy what I enjoy. Sure, I do my research, I do my work, for sure. But at the end of the day, I buy what I enjoy. Recently, I just finished the 4 Horsemen? Is that the word, Magic guys? For Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends in the Dark. Finished all those binders. Probably do videos on them eventually, and I'll be stumbling through because my knowledge of Magic is nowhere near what it is in Pokemon. But the point is that I simply bought these cards. Why? Because I value them. And more importantly, I could have bought them 10 years ago for a fraction of what I paid today. In fact, if you go even further, in the past 3 years, I've spent more than the previous 10 because of that same universal truth. Just buy what I enjoy. And I recognize value. I understand value. But that doesn't mean I care about it necessarily in the sense that I'm like, I got to buy this to make this. I got to do this to make that. It's just something, if anything, that genuine interest is what motivated me and gave me the courage, if you will, to be first to market. Being first to market is heavily romanticized, but the reality is to do that thing nobody else was doing at the time when you had no indication things were going to increase. The market was going to grow. That's the highest amount of risk. That's that risk appetite. Going back to that Bill Ackman individual or anybody who's made an exorbitant amount of wealth in their life, at some point they had to do that extremely risky speculative action. They had to take that huge strategic risk. So, going back to that question, what should I buy? It needs to start with, what do you enjoy? Because not everyone's going to act like me. More specifically, I and Gary have been around a comparable amount of time. He's definitely older, more seasoned, I think, than most collectors. No offense, Gary. But at the end of the day, we do different things. We cover different grounds. There are people, been around the same time as me who go a different route as well. Our collections have a different complexion. So the answer isn't always true for everybody. You can create markets in different areas, but more importantly, that idea of value. I'll give you an example of something I buy pretty consistently. English Pikachu trophies. I don't care really what in my opinion, I think they're undervalued for what the price reflects right now for their rarity. But even if that's not true, even if they go down in price, I don't care because I still own an item that's the top of the mountain rarity. It has unique art. It's a handful of copies, and it's some of the rarest cards, not only in Pokemon, but all hobbies at large. So that's the focal point. And the last thing I want to close with here is the action, because I think, while talking about that idea of trophies, if at some point somebody sells, a bit of their collection, all their collection, then comes back, I've seen every single pattern. I've seen someone piece it out and they're like, you know what, I missed that card. I'm going to go get it again. I'm going to thin out this and go another direction, maybe thin that out and go another direction. Everyone's so quick to throw the dolphin emoji on there and call them a flipper. But the last thing I'll close with is action is not always a binary end game. Going back to something like Gary. Gary sold some cards. It's like me as well. I have a collection. I'm also a business. It's a straddling the fence identity. And I think a lot of people will say, well, you're only a collector if you never sell a single card. And, to translate that to like real life, that would be like saying, only monks who completely void themselves of all physical pleasures and shave their head and live this really strict life are good. There's a wide array of good in the context of what's good. That's the point here, is that action is not always a binary answer. Just because someone does sell something, buy something, do something, you really have to understand this is a long-term game. It's the last thing I can give you is that we understand things long-term in hindsight. We try to take our best strategic risks moving forward, but at the end of the day, best thing I can tell you, what I still do this day, sure, I cover my tracks, I do my due diligence, but I simply buy what I enjoy. Going back to Magic, if these cards go down in price, I don't care because I just wanted these binders to look at these cards from the 90s that I have nostalgia for and just see them all together in a binder, and it's that simple. That's all it is. And sure, maybe if I get to live to like 100 and I decide to sell them at that point, do something, I don't know. But the bottom line is that's the reason why, again, I could have bought them at a fraction of the price. I simply chose not to back then, so this is why I pay, because of that core value. And again, you will lose at some point. That's what I want to tell you. You got to end on a positive, negative note. But that's what I have, guys, for this video. This is one of those discussion type videos. Hopefully this was useful. It's a perspective I thought of the other day while I was on a walk, and I think it really delivers what's missing right now in collectibles because, again, we are insulated. It's unregulated. So it's very easily to float and always expect the best outcome. But keep in mind, there are going to be losses at some point, and more importantly, those losses help you get a better understanding on how this works, and it really solidifies. The losses I have really solidify that choice I made, that pattern, so I can learn from it moving forward, like anything else. So there you go. Hopefully that was useful, and that is pretty much it, guys. Until next time.